Om Aganati Mananda Shagana Saraka Chaksurun Meditam Yanatashmai Sigrave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobistam Sapitam Yana Bhutare Samrupakaram Darati Swaparandikam Bandeham Siguru Siata Parakamanam Shigurun Vaishnavamscha Sirupam Zagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadyutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivisikhan Vitam Stam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinam and Minister Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pachanini Nirvishesa Sanyavadi Paskata Deyasadhani Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayodira Nashta Prayeshu Abhadresu Nityam Bhagadase Bhagavatu Tamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Welcome to Transcendental Tuesday. We're a little late again. It takes 2 or 3 minutes to set up on Facebook. Then you click live on Facebook, start chanting the Guru prayers, and then you remember, oh, I forgot to hit the public button. The default is only you. So every once in a while I forget to hit the public. I don't know how to make the default public. So I forgot. That's why we're 3 minutes late coming to you here on this Transcendental Tuesday. But thanks for your patience. Thanks for jumping in. Anjali, Malini Preeti, Raleigh, Jimmy, Bye Bobby, Manasa Ganga, and Justin. Thank you all. We're a merry crew. I have a theory on why the virtual background, all those sumptuous scenes of the Spanish Fork, the idyllic Spanish Fork temple are no longer working. They're eating at me from the edges. And that's because yesterday was the solstice, the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. For the virtual background to be fixed in place and not sort of encroach upon the subject, you need natural light. And so the amount of natural light coming through my window over here is probably the least in the whole year, yesterday and today. But the good news is the days are going to start getting longer as of yesterday. And so my estimation is a week or so, all it takes until there's enough light at 7:30 in the morning, Mountain Daylight Time, so we can bring back some of those wonderful landscapes, temple skates from the Spanish Fork Temple. Shall we dive in for the 5th day in a row, this quintessential verse, which is found in the 3rd chapter, the 1st canto of the Bhagavatam. Krishna, Swadhamapagate, Dharmagana Visha, Karo Nasta. Good morning, Soka Krishna. Karo Nasta Dishamasha, Pranano Ko Dunoditaham. The Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. With all the medical advances and all the emphasis on prolonging one's life, we mentioned yesterday that Sankaracharya, he only lived for 32 years. He was only on the planet for 32 years. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the devotional incarnation of Krishna, was on the planet for only 48 years. So are their lives less significant than the lives of trees, for instance, that live vast period of time? We talked about Methuselah, which is the oldest living tree in the California White Mountains. It's almost 4,600 years old. We talked about a Bodhi tree in India, which was planted by the granddaughter of Ashok from a sapling that was taken from the original Bodhi tree of Buddha. But which one is more valuable to human society? The tree under which Buddha sat, which still perpetuates itself from son or grandson, you might say, or Buddha? Obviously, it's not the duration of your life, but it's the quality of your life. It's what you do with it. When you pass over and you appear before your maker or his representative, he's not going to ask, how long did you live? How long did you drag on? How long did you continue flapping? How long did you breathe like the bellows or eat and discharge semen and propagate your dynasty like the animals in the village, like the dogs and cats. I'm not going to ask anything about the duration of your life, the quantity of your life, but the whole inquiry is going to be about what did you do with it? And we cited the example of Bali. Bali gave up everything in a moment. He had a moment of full lucidity of Krishna consciousness. And against the advice of his spiritual master, he gave the dwarf incarnation, Vamana, the entirety of the three worlds, which he had gained due to hard work, risking his life, tremendous exertion, strategy, battles, wars. Kingdoms such as the universe are not easily obtained. And for a demon whose normal abode is in the bottom half of the universe, this is like an extraordinary once in a million. Oh, the demons surge up and they oust the demigods and Indra from his throne, Vayu, Kumara, and they take over all the managing of the universe. It's like kids in a candy shop. It's like Christmas. Hard won, rarely achieved. And yet Bali, Atma Niveda, he personified the ninth devotional practice of giving up everything on behalf of the Lord. It only took a moment, but it was the sum total of a life lived in full Krishna consciousness. Most of our exemplary devotees, they are young men. They were able to give up kingdoms, wives, children, opulence, influence, in order to achieve the greater goal of going back home, back to Godhead. Good morning, Ram Kishore. Nice to have you with us. Sanjay, Hare Krishna Prabhu. So the value of one's life is not judged by its duration. I remember in the Kali Yuga, we live at most 100 years, and that's emphasized at most because the average lifespan of a male is 72. The average lifespan of a female is 77. It's extraordinary when someone even gets to 100 years of age. In the Provo Freedom Festival parade, I remember a few years ago, the Grand Marshal of the parade, the most honored person who got to ride in a convertible, fancy convertible, all decked out. This particular person couldn't stand and wave to the crowd. She sat and waved to the crowd. But she was elected as the Grand Marshal of the Provo Freedom Festival parade for no other reason than that she'd lived to be 106 years old. That was so extraordinary to live 100 plus years. And if you do that, there's a good chance that in a medium-sized town somewhere in America, if that's your residence, you can apply to be the Grand Marshal of the parade. But that doesn't mean that someone who lived 106 years their life was more valuable than Lord Chaitanya lived 48 years, or Shankaracharya lived 32 years. On the other hand, if the Lord is not done with you, if you're right in the middle of what the Lord wants you to do in this lifetime, and he'll have other assignments for you when you transition from this life to another, no worries there. As long as that's what you want, that's what you pray for. But it may be that Lord wants you to serve in this lifetime for a prolonged period of time. It's not that you have any obligation to die young, even though Bali gave up everything at a young age. Parikshit gave up everything at a young age. The Pandavas retired at a young age. It doesn't mean that your life, that God's plan for your life involves going on the sidelines, retiring or dying at a young age. He may have plans for you. Prabhupada was with us until 82. In fact, he didn't even activate his mission until he was 70. And we never know what the Lord's going to do. I remember hearing about a lady who was 114. She lived in Los Angeles, and the newspaper reporter asked her to what she attributed her long life. She quite simply said, the Lord wasn't done with me. So whether we live a short life or a long life, the value of your life depends upon the level of your submission and surrender. And that's what we want to talk about today. This theme of our discussion is the art of submission. This material world is a very dangerous place. Samsrita ye para palava param, mahat param panyaya sho marari, babamburiya vatsa param 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 badiparam dashesham. This world is a world of birth, death, disease, and old age. There are dangers. at every step. We're in these fleshy bodies, we're vulnerable. Anybody going to object to that statement that we're vulnerable right in the middle of a pandemic? Hello. What was it? 300,000 people infected in one day in America, and you don't think we're vulnerable? No, we're vulnerable to tidal waves, earthquakes, hurricane, global warming. We're vulnerable to viruses and enemies and backstabbers at the office. We're also vulnerable to our own bodies, which let us down often, and our own minds. I remember we were doing a Festival of Colors in Los Angeles a couple of years ago. The managers of the park there, Whittier Narrows Park, are kind enough to let us sleep right on site in our motorhome the day before the festival, so we can get up 6 in the morning and start setting up the tents and all the exhibits and everything, get an early start. And we're joined by quite a number of volunteers at 8 a.m., but we like to get a jump on everything. And the two of us, myself and Pada, start unpacking the truck at least so everything's right at hand when the volunteers arrive. And by the way, shout out to Natural Honor Society, key clubs all over America. You guys are fantastic. All these young kids are off the charts in terms of their IQ, their intelligence, their grades. They're all 4.0 average students, and yet they still have a wonderful community spirit. Wherever we go with the Color Fest, or wherever we used to go, at least, we would always get dozens and dozens of volunteers, young kids, mostly, interesting enough, Asians, Chinese, Vietnamese, Cambodian, Hispanic, Afro-American, and some Caucasians as well. So they would arrive at 8 a.m., but we would want to get a head start. Anyway, you're probably wondering where this story is heading. But I woke up, I'm 74 now, I guess this was when I was 72, and my knee had locked. So I'm thinking, okay, we've got our second biggest festival of the year after Spanish Fort. We got to get ready for a 2-day event in which 8,000 or 9,000 people are going to come. And I can't walk. I can't walk without excruciating pain. I can't do anything. And I thought, okay, now you're in a pickle, Caru. You know, you've bit off, Nectar of Instruction warns you about over endeavor. So how can two people put on a festival for a 2-day festival for 8,000 people 700 miles away? Well, volunteers is one thing, but Krishna giving you a working set of knees is another thing. So I was thinking, Krishna, what have you gotten me into? I can't move. But, tiny, tiny steps, limping, just like staggering around in circles. After about a half an hour, the pain went away. And I thought, thank you, Krishna. You gave me a hint of how fragile I am, but you restored me. So let's get going now with this festival. So we're we're eminently vulnerable. We're incredibly vulnerable in this material world. We're also blind. It's like you're dropped into a jungle with snakes and scorpions and tarantulas and cannibals, all kinds of diseases, and you're blind. You really don't have a chance of survival. This jungle is the material world. If you're blind to spiritual realization, if you're blind to self-knowledge, if you just think that you're this body and you take what's been given to you from a physical sense as your all in all, sure, we've got eyes, our eyes are open, but we're actually blind as far as how to see this material world as a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, and ultimately how to get out of this material world, because it's alien to us. It's not our home. Neither is this material body our natural abode, our natural residence. We are meant for unrestricted, unlimited, unconditional freedom. Our situation right now is exactly the opposite. Prakriti kriyamarani gunae karmana sarvasha hankara vimuratma kartamiti manyate. It is only due to false ego that we think we're the controllers, we think we're the doers. Actually, everything is enacted by material nature according to the directions of the Lord. So if you're in a jungle, imagine you're blind and your chances of getting out of the jungle are zero. Okay, now let's say that you have some liquor at hand. Some or other, you've got a jug of liquor and you drink that jug of liquor. Now you're blind and you're drunk. So now your chances are less than zero. The Prabhupada says that the souls in this material world, not only are they fallen, blind, incapacitated, lost in a vast samsara, a vast jungle, but they're also drunk. Oh, by the way, and the jungle is on fire, incidentally. The definition of samsara is it is a forest which is on fire. And we're getting ourselves intoxicated. Prabhupada says, the conditioned souls who are entrapped by the material energy hardly know the higher principles of life. Most of them are just like animals, engage in eating, sleeping, mating, defending, engage in sense enjoyment under the pretension of religiosity, knowledge, or salvation. You know, we have the image of someone being so passionate, so lusty, they're literally blinded by desire, isn't it? Good example of this was Ravana. Otherwise, Ravana had good birth. He knew a lot of scriptures. He was Brahmin, so many qualifications, high IQ. But when he set eyes on Sita, Dayato Visham Pumsam Sangat Teshubaja, Sangat Sanjayate Kama, Kama Kroda Vijayate, Kroda Bhavati Samaha, Samaham Smiti, Buddhina Shat Panishana, Nana Pranasyanatati. From contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment. From attachment, lust. From lust, bewilderment, memory. From bewildered memory comes anger, and one falls down into the material pool. So how can someone extricate themselves from the dangerous forest fire of this material world when they're blind and drunk on passion, overcome with lust? It is their chances of salvation are not zero, they're less than zero. Krishna Baliya say Jiva Bahira Dirmaka Taiva Maya Tare Samsara Deka. Forgetting Krishna, forgetting myself as an eternal spiritual being, one becomes enamored with the samsara dukkha. One becomes enamored with this inflamed jungle of the material world. And not only does one not have the tools to escape it, but being so overwhelmed by passion and lusty desires, one doesn't even want to escape it. This is Maya. Prabhupada said Maya has two features. She throws you, she casts you from eternality, bliss, and knowledge, from unlimited, unconditional freedom into this material. And she does it according to her own desires. We're basically saying, Maya, throw me. This is where I want to be. So Maya throws us here. And then, having accepted this material body and then generated byproducts of this body in the terms of wife and children and grandchildren and cousins and the extended self in terms of the nation in which I took birth, one is then covered. First she's thrown and then covered. Comes to think, well, this is not so bad after all. You know, I could make it here. Thanks for joining us. Again, thanks for your comment. Manasa Ganga sharing with us. Yeah, she's talking about kneecap. I know about kneecap. It happens about once every 3 months. I do the treadmill every morning. I did about 5 or 6 miles earlier this morning while chanting, just in the next room there. And every once in a while, the kneecap locks. And she said the only thing she could do when her kneecap locked was to helplessly chant Hare Krishna. And she's got a respite right now in this period of her life from the pain. Yep. As soon as you take this body, there are so many anomalies that come along with this body. So the goal of life, the purpose of life, is to not be oblivious of the dangers that surround us, and therefore live an animalistic life of irresponsibility, just indulging in the immediate gratification of the senses in the 4 areas of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. This is the definition of a blind society, living in the darkness of ignorance. And the question is asked in this verse, Krishna swadhamapagade, dharmagadabihi, karonashta dushamasha paranakodir. After Krishna left 5,000 years ago and returned to his own abode, taking with him religion and knowledge, how are people living in the dense darkness of this Kali Yuga supposed to get light? And the answer is, this Srimad Bhagavatam is a torchlight whereby we can get transcendental knowledge. We need light to get out of the jungle. What to speak of light? Because the society is blind to the values of self-realization. We need not just light. Light doesn't do a blind man any good, because the blind man can't capture and use the light to refract images back to him. So you need the light, but you also need the eyes. And if you don't have the eyes, you need someone else who has the eyes. In our modern materialistic society, Prahlad Maharaj nailed it. Prahlad Maharaj lived tens of thousands of years ago. And yet, so long ago, very prophetically, Prahlad Maharaj, and this is from the 31st verse of the 5th chapter, the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Prahlad Maharaj, Natevi du Shvartikatimi Vishnu. People do not know the ultimate goal of life. They do not know what is in their ultimate benefit. Darasya ye bahir artamani. Therefore, instead of trying to figure out how to get out, extricate themselves from the forest fire of this material world, they run towards it. They become attached to the temporary flickering allurements. Just like a forest fire, it can be quite enamoring. I mean, haven't you on a winter day sat? I know that my home in Pennsylvania was passed down through generations of our family. It was built during the Revolutionary War, big stones. And there are 3 downstairs rooms, each one of which had a fireplace. So we used to sit on a winter's day in Pennsylvania where the snow was a foot or 2 foot deep, with a big fire, especially Christmas, Thanksgiving, big fire in the fireplace. And you could look at that fire for hours. It was the dancing flames. There's something innately fascinating to us human beings about the fire. But at the same time, it's lethal, it's dangerous. If there's a forest fire, you don't run to the fire like a moth. You have the sense to run away from the fire. So Prahlad Maharaj says, Andaya tandera upaniyamana tevishatantana dhamrimana. So let's say you're in a forest, it's on fire. You can't see, you don't know which way to go to get out of the danger. So someone says, follow me. Follow me. Well, if someone's calling out, you say, follow me, you assume, right, that they can see. But that may not be the case. They may be calling you to follow them while they themselves are just as blind as a bat. What's going to happen if a blind man follows another blind man? Then they're both going to run right into the flames, run over a cliff or into a ditch. The key is if you're blind, don't follow another blind man, because if you do, you'll miss the path, fall into a ditch, get immolated in the forest fire. And what the problem with society is nowadays, it's not so much that we're blind, because that's the nature of common men, but it is that we're blind and misled by cheaters who falsely lead us into thinking or mislead us into thinking that they know what the purpose of life, the goal of life is. And all they want is sense gratification. They're just bigger animals leading the smaller animals. That's all they are. Shravid varashtakari samsita prishapada nayakarpada jatu namagadaгаja. And as a result, instead of leading us out of the forest fire, leading us towards ultimate liberation of the soul, we're just led into this continuous cycle of rebirth repeatedly. We continue again and again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries due to material nature, miseries due to other living entities like the virus, and miseries due to our own body and mind. This is the cycle. Karma is action and reaction. You sow the seed, you face the deed. Whatever you do comes back to you. The law of cause and effect ensures that the balance is perfect. Detecting whatever you do, good and bad, it will resurrect. Death is not the end, it's just a bend. Whatever you've done will come back again. The body may die, but your karma is standing by. You'll be reborn and live and die, continue to suffer and cry. As an aroma follows the flowers, heat pursues the fire, your karma will track you as soon as you leave the funeral pyre. Karma decides how you'll be reborn, comely or scorned, straight or humiliated, straight, humble, humiliated, high or humiliated, straight or deformed, healthy or ill, long or short-lived, animal or human, sheltered or adrift. Karma is what makes the world go round. It's cause and effect right down there on the ground for those going over and around, up and down, bound by their deeds, drowned by their needs. Is there any purpose to our life on earth? Do we just die and continually take birth? Is there any escape from the pain of coming back again and again and again and again? Well, you're not this flesh, you're not this mind. You're an eternal spirit designed in the image of the Almighty Divine, assigned to a service sublime, attracted by unselfish action, serving the Lord with dispassion, acting only for his satisfaction. Devoted souls achieve extraction from karmic reaction. If you want to burn up your karma, practice the Dharma, pleasing the Lord, fashioned by his hand, acting according to his plan, and never come back to this material world again. We need leaders who will not perpetuate the cycle of birth, death, disease, and old age, who will not keep us restricted in what Prabhupada calls this, the 4 billion mile limit of this material world, which is within the dark creation of the world, of the creation, dark corner of the creation. The whole material world, as vast as it is, composing millions and millions of universes. And each universe is like a coconut. It's like a shell floating on the waters of the causal ocean. The entire material universe is just a corner in the spiritual sky. It's a dark corner of the spiritual sky where the light is artificial. Without the light of the sun and the moon, these eyes would have no function, would have no purpose. And similarly, without the light of transcendental knowledge, which is available in the Srimad Bhagavatam, passed down to us through the disciplic session of great souls like Parikshit, Sukadeva Goswami, Bali Maharaj, Narada Muni, etc., we can't see our way clear of this dark material world of birth, death, disease, and old age. We find ourselves captured and trapped within the 4 billion mile diameter of this particular material creation. Though we may have others who volunteer, who step forward, falsely proclaim themselves to be men of vision who can lead us without any knowledge of the material conditions, without any knowledge of the severity of the danger we're in. But those false leaders, the blind leaders who claim to have vision, are totally rejected, totally and declaratively rejected by the true visionaries such as Prahlad Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, Narada Muni, Sukadeva Goswami. These leaders have one thing in common. They're all focused on going towards the fire. They're more interested in this blazing material world and trying to squeeze out of it some pleasure for the senses. They're more interested in further binding themselves to this material world, wandering purposely without meaning, even more lost than they were previously, getting deeper and deeper and deeper. This is called undone tamaha, that even in the material world, there are progressively lower and lower and lower and lower places. So the common man's future is not bright because he's blind and he has blind leaders, but the position of the leader is undone tamaha. There is an especially, because their specialty is darkness, they're in darkness and they're leading others to darkness. So there's a really, really especially dark place for them within this material world, lower, not higher, and it's called undone tamaha. And that is where the so-called leaders of the material world go. It's explained elsewhere in the Bhagavatam that the leader takes 1/6 of either the pious or the sinful activities of their constituents. So someone who inflames the passions, further blinds people by promising them more intoxication, more illicit sex, more meeting, and more gambling, takes 1/6 of all the sinful activities of their constituency. And if there were blind people in the past ages, Prabhupada says, in this current age of Kali Yuga, which is an age of materialism, quarrel, and hypocrisy, there are very few spiritual redeeming qualities in this particular age. People are more blind than they are ever before. And the leaders are misdirect people to a degree that has been unknown in the entire history of the cosmos. What we have been led towards by the blind leaders who themselves are just bigger animals than the common people interested in eating, sleeping, mating, defending, is what Prabhupada says, a royal addition of the animals. And that's what we have nowadays with our so-called advanced civilized culture. We have a royal addition of the animals with nuclear weapons. The difference between us and the animals is that we have nuclear weapons with which to destroy ourselves and the whole planet. The animals, being limited by their conditions and by their species, the body they're in, they can only fight each other with tooth and claw. But we have nuclear weapons. Congratulations, humanity. Nuclear weapons are the pinnacle, the crowning achievement of your so-called polished royal edition of animal life. And they cannot see anything beyond the jurisdiction of this body. If they're a little more intelligent, they map out the areas of the mind in the form of subtle intelligence or false ego in the area of psychology, and being very proud of their achievements. They boast about our advances in science and material prosperity. All this is the royal highway to devolve into cats and dogs in our next life, having lost vision, being blind to the ultimate aim of life. Prabhupada cautions, all great saints and sober people, cautions that we should rather be more amazed by the engineer than we should by the complicated machine or dynamo. We're all gaga about the machines, the cars, the planes, the robotics, the drones, the iPads, the computerized technology. But really, the focus of our amazement should be the engineer or the creator. Similarly, we are ourselves seated on a machine, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Ridish Arjuna Tishtanti, Brahmanansar Yantarudrani Mayam. We are seated on a machine, which is Ishvara Sarvabhutanam, in which the Lord sits, and the machine itself is a creation of the Lord. So rather than being all for this machine, indulging this machine in the appetites and cravings of the senses, why not turn our attention to the person who created the machine and who cohabits the machine as our well-wishing friend, our Lord, and our advisor. That's the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. The non-devotee is all about trying to enjoy the energies of the Lord, trying to usurp that which is not his or hers, neither is it under their control, whereas the devotees are willing to cede recognition to the Lord for having created this physical world, for having created this physical body, and be full of gratitude on a moment-by-moment basis for the Lord having entered and accompanied us within this body until such time as we want to get out of this burning forest of the material world. He's there to guide us. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetu nanina jagad viparivartate. The material nature, full of physical laws, Krishna asserts in the Bhagavad Gita, is simply one, and it's the least superior of his different energies. The material energy is acting according to the direction of the engineer, Krishna. He says, because he is all powerful, simply by glancing over material nature, all the physical elements come into being and they work perfectly and combinedly. Therefore, because the Lord created everything and the Lord knows everything, nobody knows the building better than the architect. So the Lord is qualified to be our eyes, to not misdirect us towards the burning flames of the forest fire of the material world, but direct us in such a way that we can get relief from the forest fire of this material world and get off of the treadmill of repeated birth and death. If one realizes this fact, then one will follow the Lord as a blind man follows one who has eyes, thus making one's life successful. Devahuti, whose son was Kapila, a visionary avatar, representative, Shaktivish avatar of the Lord. She said, Tapasya tam tamashoandash dushparasya sakchaksur jaman ladame trad anugraham. She said to her son, who was her guru, she said, you are my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance. Why? Tapasya tam tamasho andasha. I'm in anda, I'm in a dark pit, tamaha, full of ignorance. Tapashu tamasha dushpadash sakchakshur jamanamante. I'm being tossed and turned by repeated births and deaths up and down amongst the various species. But you, Lord, know the intricacies of this material world. You know the ins and outs of it. And you are my eye. Therefore, I will follow you as diligently as a blind man follows a man who can actually see. The blind man doesn't qualify. Blind man doesn't say to the person who can say, well, I'll do this, but I won't do this. No, you pretty much have to do everything they said. You can't hold back. You can't pretend that you have certain insights which are denied to the other person with vision. If you acknowledge that I'm blind, I don't see spirit, I don't see how I can extricate myself out of the complications of this material world, then you pretty much have to surrender to one who can see. And this is what Arjuna did and made his life successful. He ran all the various scenarios through his mind in the beginning, the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and he couldn't find any good outcome. There were simply no good options. He ran out. His tank got empty. He got to the bottom of the barrel. He couldn't see any good option. He was at the end of his rope. What did he do to make his life successful? He recognized, Lord, I'm blind. You're the one who can see. So therefore, karpanya dosho pahata shabaha. I have so many doshas, so many faults, so many shortcomings. My only real option, sishisteham sarimam tarpanam, is to just surrender to me. In other words, I'm agreed to see things as you see them. And whatever you say, without any conditions on my part, or hedging, or scruples, I will follow. Sishasteham, the Sanskrit word sisha, is the origin of our English word disciple. So when Arjuna submits himself to Krishna, basically he's submitting himself unconditionally. He's willing to undergo whatever discipline, follow whatever instructions, and whatever path the Lord has established. Now there's four things. There's a 4-part program for getting out of this material world, as explained by Krishna in the 65th verse of the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Manmana, think of me. Madbhakto, become my devotee. Madhyagi, worship me. Mam namaskara, bow down for me. If you just do these simple things, none of it's painful. It's all good and healthy for the body, the mind, and the soul. To think of Krishna, you think of Krishna, your mind becomes joyful, becomes completely full of peace and meaningfulness and purposefulness. Stress, anxiety, worry become a stranger to your mind. Madbhakta, identify yourself not as American or black or white or male or female or according to ethnicity or nationality, but Madbhakta means Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhu Karanai Sravanandi Sudichit Karyodai. Who am I? I am eternal servant of Krishna. That is my eternal position. American, male, female, That refers to only this one short lifetime, a little sliver of my history. But what I am always and eternally is an eternal servant of Krishna. And then Majjigi, worship the Lord. How do we worship? We chant his holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in the association of other devotees, blissfully, joyfully. We take beautiful, sumptuous vegetarian prasadam, which has been offered to the Lord. That's how we worship him. It's not a very difficult thing, is it? And namaskaru, you bow down, you offer obeisances. Get the burden of thinking that you know everything, that you're the controller, get it off your shoulders. It never did you any good. It never did you any good. Retire from being God, and whenever you enter the temple room, just bow down and say, Krishna, you're God. I'm not God. I resign. I tried to control my life. I tried to bring about good outcomes, but I failed. And so now I'm turning everything over to you, just as Parikshit did, just as Bali did, just as Arjuna did. I'm going to be in that hallowed, exalted company. I'm going to take those personalities as my role models and not politicians of this material world. Always think of me, become my devotee, offer respect and obeisances. Just do these 4 things. And then Krishna promises, and you can count on Krishna's promise. According to Krishna's determination, the sun rises and sets, the seasons change since millions and millions and millions of years. You can't count on my promise, because between the time I promise and the execution, there's so many other conflicting factors that might buffet me here and there. And there's my own lack of strong will and determination. But you can take Krishna's promise to the bank. He says, if you do these 4 blissful, joyful things, then Mami Vasisi Satyam Te Pratijano Priyeshame. I promise you, Krishna's not just saying this casually or throwing it out as an aside. He's looking Arjuna full in the eye, and he's saying, I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose will even a blade of grass moves, without whose sanction not a sparrow falls from the sky, I promise that if you do these 4 things, you will come back to me. Why? Because you are my very, very dear friend. On that note, we'll finish our discussion for Transcendental Tuesday. Thank you so much for your attention. I know you have a lot of different options on any given day. Of course, Tuesday is like all the restaurants and the barbershops, they all offer their specials on Tuesday. So we're offering a special on liberation, and we're glad that you dropped in when all the prices have dropped. All we have to do is find the visionary, find the qualified person, and just learn the art of submission and surrender, and go back home, back to God, and live this life full of joy and peace, and then continue that joy and peace in the next life, going back to home, back to God. A little bit more on this same subject, if you don't mind. We'll go to our 6th session on this verse tomorrow and finish up our over discussion. Krishna Samad Dhammapagate Dharma Gyanabi Kado Nashta Dvishamesha Parana Ko Duno Ditaha. Our discussion verse is as follows. This Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and is arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, company of religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So Justin, thanks for your comment. TT is where it's at. Yeah, this is where it's all happening on Tuesday morning. How many exciting things happen on a Tuesday? But we can say, yeah, this is definitely an exciting Tuesday circumstance. Ram Kishore, Hari Hari Bol, Terry, those are the 4 I can see. There are 19 comments altogether. Praprana Brat just appeared on the screen here, pushing the other comments down. And let's see, okay. Thank you very much to everyone who liked the talk. That's extremely inspirational for me when you hit like. Justin, Jason Thompson, long time no see, Jason. Come and visit us again. Don't be a stranger. Ram Kishore, Manasa Ganga, Terry and Taruni. Chris is just above me in the room upstairs there. Ramananda Roy, thanks for joining us. Stoka Krishna, welcome home from your travels. Rajapati Sutta, Govinda Bhakta, I believe both those are in India. Alona from Riverside, we're missing you so much, Alona. Alona, her yoga school, of which she's the head, has always volunteered students to do the yoga classes at the Riverside Festival of Colors. We did the Los Angeles Festival earlier this year on March 7th and 8th. And then we were to have done the Riverside Festival the following weekend, the 14th. But that Wednesday, both the governors of Utah and California banned mass gatherings. So we had to refund everybody's money. And I had to tell Alona that her services would not be needed. And it was disappointing for both of us because one of the high points of the Riverside Festival was to hang out with Alona, such a free spirit, such a wonderful personality. Jai Krishna, another yoga teacher, his studio is right here in Orem, the Yoga Shala. He teaches yoga / karate. He's one of the preeminent teachers in both fields. So if you're considering yoga classes or karate, Jai Krishna is the go-to man. Sundari Priya from Salt Lake City, Sanjay Sarma, Jaya Murari, Anjali, we always love Anjali's spirit and her good humor. Look forward to her comments and emojis afterwards. Jimmy and Taruni, and 6 more. Unfortunately, I can't see. It just says 6 more. But I'll look forward to your likes and your comments. And also we'll wind up everything this time tomorrow on Wisdom Wednesday. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Dandavats, dandavats, dandavats. Pranams, pranams, pranams. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Agyanati Marandasya Ganangana Salaka Chaksura Miridam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, who came to me while I was standing in the darkest region of material ignorance, and with the shining torchlight of knowledge opened my eyes. Om Tat